Welcome back, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. This is the startup news and discussion for today. Michael Santarcangelo is, of course, with us. Welcome back, Michael.
It's always good to be here, especially when we're going to talk about the stories in the news and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, we got some pretty cool stuff to talk about, I will say. I really like it.
Let me chime in here real quick. I just want to say I'm loving some of the feedback that we're getting too. So those of you that keep it coming, and I know some of you have asked for us to touch on some different topics. We will. With our guests and stuff, we're going to explore the things that you guys want around founders and hiring and everything else. And that's going to influence some of the stories that we pull. So if you've got ideas or you got a story you want our opinion on, shoot it to us and we'll tackle it.
Absolutely. I got two topics that I want to start off with. The first one is the funding stuff that we just talked about during the break. And then the second one is we have a couple stories that kind of overlap and tie into like an update on my journey. So I think that'll be good. But so I was looking at, of course, the great website owler.com gives funding information. Most funding is public. Well, there are actually very specific factors that determine whether a funding round is public or not, right, Michael? So I looked at some, actually three different security companies and their recent funding rounds. The first one is CounterTac. CounterTac develops and delivers real-time endpoint threat detection and response technology in the enterprise. They're in a very crowded market with Cylance, Cybereason, and lots of other, probably 40 different companies at least in their space. Now, their funding history, I thought was kind of interesting. So they did some debt first, 5.7 million. They did a Series A for 9.5. They did some more equity. They did a Series B for 20 million, a Series C for 17.9. They did another 10 in equity. And just recently on Halloween, which I thought was kind of interesting, they did an unattributed round for $10 million. And basically they're a total of $78 million in funding. Kind of an interesting journey in their funding, and what looks like getting enough capital to have the research and development to be competitive in their space. So it's interesting how the different areas in security, I think we're going to see different kinds of funding to be able to compete, and this is a very crowded space. Now, this company was founded in 2007, so they're not an early startup. They're pretty well established, so... I have not looked in depth into their products. Maybe that's something for Enterprise Security Weekly, which we can cover.
Yeah, that'd be a fun crossover show. You know what I think is interesting about those two is the way I start looking at it is who the investors are and how many rounds they've participated in. And in this case, their investors have pretty much stayed with them the whole time. And they've done a couple equity rounds in addition to their funding rounds. That's an interesting thing. And so their estimated revenue is $8 million. Obviously, I have no visibility into that.
Yeah, those are just those are crowdsourced numbers, by the way.
Yeah, but gosh, there's a lot of funding there. So that's interesting. I'd be curious to see how that works out.
Now, it's interesting. There's another one called Simplified. Simplified develops and offers software as a service that enables the use of biometric access across any device. Now, this is a very early startup. On Halloween, coincidentally enough, they took a $1 million seed round. So obviously that's very different from the other companies, and they had a good enough pitch and idea to get $1 million in their seed round, which is good for them. And curious to see how their company develops in that space.
Yeah, I mean that's a good seed round, right? I mean,
yeah, it is.
That's not a Series A round where we're going to see something in the 3 to 5 million range on average. That's $1 million. So I mean that'd be a fun story to talk about, to say how did you do that?
Right? Like, how did you? Yeah, with seemingly no. I mean, it doesn't look like they're even in any kind of a beta or anything like that. They could be in a private beta mode, but it does not look like they have a product. Although I could be wrong. Could be something that you just sign up for.
You know what else is interesting?
Oh yeah, sign up for our early. It says sign up for our early preview. So yeah, they're.
Well, yeah, and you know what else I'm noticing on it? It's they're in Madison, Wisconsin. So they're not right, because one of the things we keep talking about is you don't have to be in one of these cyber corridors. You can be in different places now. So that'll be interesting. If anybody's looked at this or knows it, that let us know if you think that'd be a fun interview. There might be something here to talk about.
There's the last one in security is Acalvio, which is in a very crowded space. They do advanced threat defense solutions to detect, engage, and respond to malicious activity inside the perimeter. It's similar to what Flux does, actually. They're in the same market as Light Cyber, TrapX, and Ativo Networks. Sort of. Even the competition in Owler is somewhat crowdsourced, but they do a pretty good job of keeping it updated. In any case, my good friend Chris Roberts works for Acalvio. And they just took, they have a Series B listed here for $17 million, which is a pretty good hefty Series B for a company in this market. And on November 3rd, they took an undisclosed equity round, which is kind of interesting.
Well, you know what's also interesting in this is all it's listing is their Series B round and their equity round. There's the seed's not listed, the A's not listed. That's interesting.
Now, let's look at a technology company that's not in security, like Giphy, that we use all the time if I actually start up the Slack channel, because I've been forgetting to start up the Slack channel. I love Giphy. Giphy provides us like much entertainment. I struggled to figure out how their estimated revenue is 1.3 million. I don't know how they make money.
I was gonna say you know what's funny? I looked at the same thing and I went, they're making $1 million? How?
And it says Giphy operates a search engine that allows users to share, discover animated graphics, interchange formats on the internet. And they do have competition listed there. I'm not sure if that's actually real competition or not. But their Series A was 2.5. Their Series B was 17. They took a Series C of 55, and now on October 30th took a Series D round of $72 million for a company that Michael and I are like, how do they make money?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I'm not sure how they make money. They might make some money, but they've taken $150 million
in funding. Yeah, and they're based out of New York. It's kind of interesting. So,
what I also think is interesting is their estimated employees, right? So again, it's crowdsourced and estimated. 27 employees.
That's a lot of money for a business that basically gives us entertainment value.
Well, keep in mind, too, that their Series C was only in February. So 8 months later, they took a Series D, and it was 50% bigger. That's interesting. But, I think what you're pointing out there, though, is that from an investment perspective, I've been having conversations outside of the program on what it's like to invest in security today. And it's interesting to hear the investors say it's hard. It's interesting to hear the startups say it's hard to get invested. Everybody's feeling like, well, there's just a lot of friction around it. And I still think that's because when you say the word security or when you say cyber, right? I mean, my friend Peter Hess used to say, if you say cyber, they hear spiders and they want to stomp on it or kill it with fire. He got that right. And so, I think what Giphy's showing us, and I love doing this. I hope we do this more often. You've got something that's easy to understand. It's integrated in everything. Everybody wants to be part of it. It makes us laugh on Facebook and in Slack and on our own. And that's great. Let's do that. So yeah, they can get funded because they're going to be able to show reach. So this is probably going to be one of those. Are you making any money today? No, but look at our reach. Look at our integration. Right. Now, if we just do X and can do ad revenue, right? There's going to be something that they're going to show based on their reach, their use, their adoption. If only 2% do X, boom, look, we'll make our money back.
Right.
Where in the security space, you've got to show. I mean, we're looking at a lot of crowded spaces in security, and so now you've got to defend yourself and explain yourself better. And that's actually one of the stories that we'll talk about. But yeah.
So then you had something in there about the top 5 best presentation apps your startup needs.
And it's funny. That's exactly the one I was going to go to. Here's the thing. I put this one up to say, don't buy the hype. Please stop. And let me be clear. It's suggesting that you use Haiku Deck, Keynote, PowerPoint, Prezi, and Microsoft Sway. The only one I wasn't familiar with was Microsoft Sway. Here's what I can tell you every time. When I'm in presentations, whether they're pitches or they're whatever, please just be simple and focus on your value. Like if you've got to choose between, hey, we could do this really cool animated rotational circle. Yeah, listen, focus on your value, communicate your value. The thing I've been studying for the last week or two, talking to startups and companies, number one challenge, Paul, We don't have alignment of value internally. If you don't know your value prop and you're not aligned on it internally, you will not execute against it properly externally. So please, I actually put this one up to say, and it's interesting because a lot of you have talked about us talking about pitches. Obviously, I've got some time in saddle here. I like Keynote. I use PowerPoint. My suggestion is simple, clean, consistent, tell the right story. Those are the things we're gonna keep talking about. But please don't get hooked up in, I'll use this other thing. It's really cool. People will like it. No, I have never seen the diamond wipe shade flippy thing close a deal.
Yep. I completely agree. I think if you can't tell your story in slides without the help of advanced presentation technology, you probably don't have that compelling of a story, or you just don't have as much experience in building presentations as some of us. Like I've spent way too much time building presentations, but because we've done training and stuff. But so it's interesting, Michael, as you stated all of that. One of the realizations that I came to was I'm going to use Google Slides, and it is probably the least feature rich out of the bunch.
Yep.
However, from a tactical and communications perspective, I can get at my presentations from anywhere, right? Yep. If I've got a Windows laptop, a Linux laptop, or a Mac, I can go edit my slides. If I've got this brilliant stroke of genius and I go grab my laptop and it happens to be my Linux laptop, I can still edit my slides, which is big for me. It's really easy to share, right? You can share it amongst your group and collaborate on presentations easily. For me, those two things were more important than being able to have fancy fonts or animations or embedded videos. And I've actually tried some of that stuff and some of the other pitches, and it just doesn't work out. It doesn't make them portable. And I've really just converted everything, sales, pitches, everything. Even my own slides for presentations at cons now, I'm going to use slides. Now, if you're presenting without an internet connection, you have to export it in some format, which I'm prepared for.
You can't save it locally?
Yeah, you can. You can export to PDF or PowerPoint, and there's a couple other options in there, but essentially PDF or PowerPoint, and still give the presentation locally without internet access. So.
Yeah, no. So, and I think it's a good idea. You know, what's funny? I looked at that. One of the things that I found that I really like is I love simplicity. I embrace I'm very simple. I use 2 or 3 colors. I denote things by color shift. I denote stuff with iconography. If you're not a member of it, thenounproject.com, $10 a month, premium level membership. You should definitely show them some love. They have a remarkable number of icons. And then you can download them as a vector file, and then you can change the sizes, scale them, change colors, whatever else.
Nice.
It keeps it simple. So, it's funny. I've been looking at that too. I find myself racked between, goodness gracious, I'm still on Apple. We'll see with their latest tech how long that stays, but still using Mac. I still like Keynote. That's my default.
I do
too.
But
for everything else, I've gone to the Google. But then we're still Amazon. And so I'm looking at this going, why can't everybody play nice in the sandbox? That should be the startup. Let's go fund one of those startups. But let's go back to it then. So if you're a security startup today, focus on your value. Focus on simplifying your message. Don't be fancy. Focus on your value. It's a crowded market. So when you sound like everybody else, okay,
right.
I'll get around to it. I'll figure it out. You got to put some time into it. You got to pick a problem, and you've got to be really clear on how you solve it. I mean, just run through the rest of the 5 questions, right? What's the problem you solve?
Yeah.
How does somebody know if they're ready? What's the value that you bring? How would somebody measure it and prove it? And then remember, structure of communication. How does your solution integrate into what they're currently doing? How does it work, right? I mean, Adam just talked about the fact that they've got an API and they can connect with whatever your popular tools are. Yep, there you go.
It's interesting, tactically, my sales presentation for Security Weekly, which, I mean, I'm noticing that there are a lot of common elements between a pitch deck and a sales deck. They are very different, but there's common elements. And I converted it from Keynote and put it up in Google Slides. And yeah, I lost some of the more texture, feature-rich kind of graphics and stuff, but I just presented it yesterday to someone who was a potential buyer and someone who was like an advisor to me as well, works for a startup and has done pitches. And he was like, dude, you nailed it. He's like, I couldn't, give you much direction in either way. He's like, I think what you have is great. So
that's awesome.
To hear that feedback was like, yes, okay, now I've got it. And it's in slides now. So I think that's good advice to people that have startups. Don't get too fancy and focus on your value and the problem
keep iterating it. Look, I mean, like, we've talked about this with me, but when I started with Straight Talk, I got focused on features, and then I started focusing on benefits, and I was like, well, you can bring people together, you can give them a voice, you're going to learn, you're going to make better decisions. Coincidentally, that's still there. But what I'm finding people have gravitated to, and I'm getting smarter at listening, is two threads on an individual basis. And for your team, it's all about, can I get clarity of focus? Can I prioritize my action? And can I have confidence in executing, taking those steps? Which is, I mean, let's be fair, that's essential. That's essential in leadership. It's essential in your business and your whatever. But broader than, it's all about breaking down barriers and building the connections you need to get results. Okay, so I'm still playing with those two, but it's interesting how, like, if you go look at my deck or your deck from a year ago to what we got today,
exactly,
totally different, and that's good. This is the other story that I liked. It's really short. 3 abstract tips to basically help you be successful. Here they are. Ready? Show, don't tell. External validation beats your opinion. The more data, the more better. I love it.
It's awesome.
Like, I just put that in to go, yeah. I mean, and this is stuff we keep talking about, right? But like, show me. That's actually the stage I'm at with my business right now. Is I'm working with teams that say, okay, I get it, and we're going to put them through the paces for the next 8 to 10 weeks, and then I'll have the stories to tell, and I can show people exactly how it works. You'll also be proud, Paul. I'm using your idea on how it works. I'm actually going to start giving people some scenarios. So I have X challenge. How would this work? Because mine's a little less like it only works one way. It works different ways.
I found it makes an impact too. Speaking of like abstract things and like little things that help, kind of going back to like your pitch deck or your sales presentation, you can say like, we have these customers or we're doing this thing, but when you put up a slide with like all your customers' logos, it just really seems to connect much better than just saying, right? So having some visual proof, kind of speaking to like show it, I think that it really helps in your sales deck. And
no, it's really interesting you say that, because I find when people pitch me and they have, I call it the brag board. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Skip, I don't, you know what? Tell me what you do first. I don't care who you're working with.
Oh no, mine's at the end.
Okay.
Mine's at the end. Right.
Okay. So
you get to the end. I've already shown them the value, right? And then you get to the end, and you're like that. Here are the people taking advantage of the value. So I've already hooked them in before I show them. And that was on purpose. That was just kind of me thinking out loud, going, that should be at the end. So I'm glad to hear that feedback, Mike. That means I put it in the right spot, which I don't always do.
Yeah, at the end, I have a lot of problem with it, because then too, now that you've explained it to me, I might say, really? So-and-so's using it? Now I get it. We're in security, but I might say, okay, well, I know somebody there. Who can you connect me to? Like, it's a much better point. But I see everybody, they try to load it up front, and I'm like, right, tell me what you do first. Make me want to care, and then we'll talk about it.
The other thing too that kind of ties into our discussion today, Michael, is I've been playing around with technology. Slides being one, but other technologies to allow and ties into one of my stories, allow your startup to feel like a larger company than it really is. And I think some people read into that and are like, well, you're masking, what kind of company you are. You're trying to, be stealthy and shady about it. And I don't think that's the case. I think if you look at that as you want to behave more efficiently and take your time very seriously, like my comment to Adam, I think it was during break, was you're probably doing the job of 8 people. To do that in a startup environment and get that accelerated growth, you have to give the appearance of a big company, but you have to work very efficiently with lots of tools. And one of the companies we talked about a couple of episodes ago, Michael, was Front App.
Yeah.
And that was really speaking. Now, it's interesting because they're a startup and they just got funding, and we talked about their pitch deck and how it got all these accolades. But if you look at what they do, it's actually more interesting than their pitch deck, in my opinion. They allow you to collaborate amongst your team and interact with all the different ways that your customers communicate with you: Facebook, Twitter, email aliases, Slack, and they bring that into a ticketing-like system. I think it's tools such as these that startups can really benefit from, because it speaks to behaving like a larger company or giving the appearance of a larger company, but also in the example of Front, I think the most important thing is what Adam and previous guests like Brian Baer have said, is that you should be highly customer focused in the beginning, and having some of these tools that allow you to collaborate and channel all your messages so you can have a faster response time speaks to taking care of your customers. And I think that there's a lot of technology that we can benefit from. Now, the kind of sad ending to the story was I didn't quite get on the whole front train. I tried it and maybe I didn't spend enough time with it, but I'm like, this isn't ready for me to adopt just yet. So
yeah, but let's be fair, right? That's the second question, right? Is it ready for you? Are you ready or are we ready? And the answer could be no, but you looked at it. I like this list. The one I wanted to point out that I thought was interesting was the be busy part, right? So like to be efficient, invest in your appearance. These things make sense. And I liked how you brought up the bit of, is it trying to be something you're not? It's interesting. I actually try really hard now to be the opposite of busy with people. But what I try to also be is focused. And to me, that's that subtle difference. So there's a suggestion here was get a virtual business system and hire a virtual assistant that'll answer it for you and kick it over to you, etc. What I do with people is I just say, listen, I time block and I've got some time to be available. And if you need a time outside of that, shoot me a note and I will happily schedule it.
I couldn't agree more. I personally have adopted Calendly, and the Security Weekly organization is adopting it, and I think we're going to move into offensive countermeasures. What I'm learning about it is that different strokes for different folks, right? If, for example, the rules I'm developing are if someone is requesting time with you and they're like a consumer to you, or they're trying to sell you something, or they want to partner with you, like they need something from you essentially, then you can say, yeah, book some time on my calendar and here's the link, right? And I think that works great. There's like these in-between use cases where you're not quite sure. You really want them to book the time. You would probably take the time to book them manually, the old-fashioned way, as I call it now. So I give them the option. I say, look, I give them some available time slots. I'm available during these times. You want a meeting? Let's meet. I'm available during these times. Or if it's easier for you, you can just book time right on my calendar. And I found it's like a 50-50 success rate, right? And then there's people where, like you mention Calendly and they kind of just like ignore it or whatever, and you're like, okay, your meeting is important to me enough where I'm gonna book this time however you need me to book it. Whether we talk on the phone, like if we're on the phone. In fact, I was on the phone with someone yesterday, the day before. He's like, yeah, let's find time on the calendar. I'm like, great. Let's just go book it right now, right? You accommodate those people in that way. So you have to understand your audience and how you use some of this technology. My advice, overarching advice, is just don't funnel everyone into your automated technology-based system for customer service. Be smart about your audience.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's great advice. I like the fact too, because I use Calendly as well, and what I like about it is like when I teach, for example, the Straight Talk Leadership Experience, everybody gets an individual coaching session with me every week. So I give them a link and I go, look, this is the simplest, best way to be able to schedule that time with me, and they have a very expansive block of time. If you want to pitch me a story idea or an article, cool. I have a much more narrow, and I have rules on it. I can only take one pitch a day. And look, I'm on a backlog of writing right now, and I like the pitches. And you know what? People don't mind it because it makes it easier for everybody's schedule. But you're right. There are people that they don't like it. You know what I'm finding though too, which is great. 4 or 5 years ago, if you tried to use stuff like this, people are like, "What is that? I'm not doing that. Just find a time to talk to me." Now, it's easier to just get on people's calendars, and I think it's gonna continue. But so I like the idea of using these types of things to be better. And then, I just say too, stay focused, like clear the rest of it out and stay focused on the stuff that's going to make a difference to your customers and to your business. Otherwise you're wasting your time.
Yep. And we don't have time to waste, right? Especially we've got 5 minutes, like 4 minutes left in the show, Michael. So go for it, dude. What else you want to cover?
No, you know what? I put some other stuff up there. If somebody wants to go take a look at it, I threw up an article from Harvard Business about how boards can assess the health of their companies. And I thought, if you're in the startup mode or you're in the security mode, I've got a leadership summit again next week, and we're going to talk about how do you work with the board. I think anytime you get the chance to look at these types of things and say, how are we advising boards to look at companies, you're going to get some insights into what boards are struggling with. If you can be the person that makes it easier for them, I think you're better off. I also put up one on understanding the consumer decision-making process
I like this one.
Here's the thing. It's the same as the customer decision-making process.
I love it.
And so
the customer decision-making process begins when the customer realizes there is a problem to be solved or a need to be satisfied. You're right. That applies to any kind of selling. Yeah.
And here's the other thing too, and a lot of people don't remember this. Their first challenge is not just that they realize that they have a problem. It's that they're willing to do something about it. Inertia, which is, it sucks and I don't like it, but I'm good with it. No, people will just carry on. You've got to be able to connect with a problem that they have that they're willing to solve. Because if you're going to help them change is uncomfortable. And so it's got to be, the status quo has to be worse than their fear over changing and trying something different. Now, I see a lot of people try to play games and make it worse. And I'm going to rub salt in your wound. Yeah, don't do that. But connect with people emotionally about what their real challenges are and level with them and show them how you can help them through it. That's why we keep talking about telling people stories and helping them get where they need to be. All right, well, like in the minute or two we got left, how are you doing? How are things going, Paul?
That's really my focus right now is shoring up some of our processes and being, number one, focusing on the customer. Number two, focusing on our internal processes so we can better serve the customer. And the rewrite of the interface is coming along really nicely. And, that's pretty much where I'm at right now, which is, it's a good place to be. We obviously have a lot of work to do, as always, in the startup mode, but that's kind of where I'm at.
That's awesome. That's really good. It turns out a lot of the work I've done over the last couple of weeks has really paid off. And this week, I realized that busy people need a little bit more space. I lengthened out the cohort, added a couple more coaching sessions to it, and I just announced a team package and I got smart finally. It's a beta. So anybody who's in this current cohort, if they come in with 5 people, they get the team package at no extra cost. And that's going to give me the stories and let me figure it out. And then we're going to roll it out and market in January. And it's been a really good way to reward people that act quickly. And I think it has caught some attention. So if you're listening and you're interested, give me a holler. I've still got about a week left, and I can welcome another team or two into it. Otherwise, we'll have some updates in the beginning of the year. We'll see how I did.
And speaking of being customer-focused, surveys are great. Don't overdo them. But we did put together our first survey for Security Weekly, securityweekly.com/survey. You can go there. Please fill out our survey. Tell us what you think. And there's an open comments section in the bottom. Is the last question. Keep us entertained. That's all I ask. See if you can entertain us in that last question. But please, your feedback is very valuable, and it helps us shape both the content for the existing shows and what new shows you may want. So if you want to have input as to what you want to listen to on Security Weekly Network, securityweekly.com/survey. And that's it. That concludes this episode of Startup Security Weekly. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. I'm out.